a cold immersion can be considered an instant cure for anxiety because it instantly changes your physiology and tones down many of the markers of acute anxiety. How about a quick breather show on the wonderful hot health topic of therapeutic cold water exposure? And I recorded an entire lengthy episode going into detail about the scientific benefits, the health benefits. So I direct you to listen to that for more details, but I'm going to get you excited and started out. And guess what? I'm developing a comprehensive online multimedia educational course to cover all aspects of therapeutic cold exposure and all the wonderful benefits and how you can get started. But here, let's just talk briefly about what this whole fashionable, exciting health trend is all about, the benefits, and how you can get started, and also get rid of some of the misconceptions that this is about suffering and being a tough person, and you see someone do it and you're unfamiliar with it and you think, boy, that is just crazy. So it's not about engaging in something that can be health compromising, even in the short term, nor about suffering or enduring something that is, unpleasant as a whole. Of course, it's not wonderful to jump into a cold tub in the same manner that it is to jump into a hot spa and instantly relax. But what you get, the sum total of all the benefits, is a wonderful feeling of exhilaration, a sense of accomplishment, and a great way to improve your hormonal, metabolic, and immune function in general everyday life without that pain and suffering that many people associate with the practice. So the benefits are just stunning and across the board. It's the adaptive response, what your body does when it is exposed to cold water, where you get all the health benefits. So what we're talking about is an appropriately brief fight or flight stressor to the body. And I emphasize brief because if you were to go jump into a cold lake and stay there for an hour, you are talking about a fatal situation. Same with going into the ice bath for too long. You're going to be in big trouble. So what we're doing is we are sending the hormonal signal to hormonal and genetic signaling for the body to respond with a whole bunch of health boosting behaviors, health boosting mechanisms that happen in the body. So when you expose yourself to cold water in the appropriate duration, appropriate manner, you will boost hormonal, metabolic, immune function, and you will get a bunch of psychological benefits when you make this a regular practice. It has tremendous benefits to the anti-inflammatory mechanisms in the body. So it prompts an anti-inflammatory response. It fine-tunes your inflammatory mechanisms in the body that will kick into gear in attempts to control the many influences that we have that promote chronic inflammation in the body, such as overly stressful, hectic, modern lifestyles. You also get a tremendous enhancement, immediate enhancement in blood circulation and oxygen delivery throughout the body. Again, it's the body responding to the stress of cold by pumping up cardiovascular function, and thereby, as you make this a regular practice, improving your overall cardiovascular function. You also get an immediate wake-up call. So it has a wonderful mood-boosting effect on your neurotransmitters, on your brain function, on your central nervous system, vastly superior to, let's say, drinking a cup of coffee because it's natural, it doesn't have any adverse side effects. The prominently cited research from Finland is that a brief of a 20-second immersion into water at 40 degrees Fahrenheit will prompt a boost in the mood-elevating hormone norepinephrine, a boost to the tune of 200 to 300% that lasts for 60 minutes after you get out of the water. So talk about a wake-up call, 20 seconds, which most practitioners recommend going in for a bit or quite a bit longer than that. But it's nice to cite that research when the water's down as low as 40 degrees. You jump in there, you get out before you know it, and you feel alert and energized and invigorated. And I'm sure most all of us can reference a time when we were pushed into the pool or you jumped into the lake on a dare and you got out screaming and can't believe how cold it was. but you felt alert, energized, and invigorated for a long time afterward. So this is a deliberate attempt to wake up the body, to boost immune and anti-inflammatory properties. The immune system kicks into high gear when exposed to cold in the aftermath in an effort to bring the body back to homeostasis. And it also has some research showing that it can help with accelerating fat metabolism in the interest of reducing excess body fat. Because when you jump into cold water, you activate something called brown fat. And this is a special type of fat that has the sole function of keeping the body warm. And so brown fat is starting to be burned as you jump in the cold water in response to trying to warm the body up. And the activation of brown fat prompts the upregulation of burning irregular stored body fat. It's called white fat. So it can be a powerful catalyst to fat reduction when done properly. This is a kind of a complex issue, and I think people oversimplify it to say if you jump in the cold tub, you're going to start losing weight. But I think also what happens with a regular cold therapy practice is that you can experience a boost in appetite. And you probably referenced this from being out in the cold, doing some hard work, shoveling snow, chopping wood, skiing all day, and you come back with a ravenous appetite. So when the body gets cold, it has a strong desire to rewarm, refuel. And so if you're trying to lose excess body fat, you kind of have to ride out that appetite spike to get the maximum benefits and turbocharge fat burning in the hours after your cold therapy session. So it has this wonderful boost in hormone function, cognitive function, and I'll reference a little bit of science here from Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who has a great paper that you can download for free, referencing all the scientific benefits of cold exposure. She explains that norepinephrine, the thing that boosts up to 200, 300% for an hour after a brief immersion, helps reduce inflammation by inhibiting inflammatory cytokines, and also the noted adverse agent TNF-alpha, which is believed to be associated with many disease patterns. So when you can get this anti-inflammatory boost, it's going to help you with disease prevention over time. The quelling of the inflammatory cytokines is also believed to help with anxiety and depression. And indeed, there's great research suggesting that a cold immersion can be considered an instant cure for anxiety because it instantly changes your physiology and tones down many of the markers of acute anxiety. There's a researcher named Nikolai Shevchuk who says cold exposure, quote, probably the stimulation of the dopaminergic transmission in the mesocorticolimbic and nigrostriatal pathway. These dopaminergic pathways are known to be involved in the regulation of emotions. So you get that dopamine boost, that natural dopamine boost from cold exposure, as opposed to the artificial dopamine boost that you get from these dopamine triggering behaviors that we are addicted to in modern life, the mobile technology, the consumption of junk food or street drugs or prescription drugs, watching porn, playing video games, gambling on the slot machines, all these things that flood the dopamine pathways of the brain, but have an adverse long-term response of suppressing or lowering our baseline level of dopamine. Not so with cold exposure. So you get a wonderful dopamine spike. That is the mood elevating hormone that is known for its role in motivation. And so you're going to feel like you're ready for a busy, productive day from a very brief immersion into cold exposure with no flip side adverse effect afterward as you get from the dopamine triggers that require little effort. So the benefits or the beauty of cold exposure is you are building your resilience, you're persevering through an event that is perceived to be fight or flight, and then you get out and your body is stronger and more resilient for it. And speaking of that, the psychological benefits are profound. In fact, I put those at the top of my passion for cold exposure. Is just building the focus, resilience, and discipline and sense of satisfaction that you can actually do this on a regular basis. And I've been doing so since 2018. I had a streak for a while where I went every single day, and I kind of replaced that obligation with my commitment to do my morning exercise routine every single day. So my cold therapy practice, I allow myself a little bit of leeway. There's great research from Huberman Lab podcast, Dr. Andrew Huberman, citing studies that suggest that striving to get around 11 minutes a week of total cold exposure broken into however many 3 or 4 or 5 sessions would be optimal. So if you can just hit that low threshold with your total cold exposure on average per week, you're getting all the long-term hormonal, anti-inflammatory, immune boosting benefits. So I will have the average duration of my stays in the water 1.5 to 2.5 minutes, and doing that several times a week. I'm getting plenty of cold exposure on average over the long term without feeling obligated or feeling a potential sense of dread or obligation that you have to get in there. And contrary to a popular misconception, the outdoor weather doesn't really matter that much because you're not standing out in the snow freezing for 30 minutes after your cold exposure. So it's rain or shine or snow. I love going in Lake Tahoe in the winter and wading through the fresh snow on the ground to the water's edge, and then jumping underwater into that nice cold water for a very brief stay, and then immediately into the hot shower or the hot spa and enjoying that rewarming benefit. So it's a sense of accomplishment. It's that ability to focus and be resilient against stress that carries over into all other forms of stress and potential distraction you face throughout the day. So if you can prove to yourself that you have the discipline and the commitment to do something that is not widely regarded as pleasurable, enjoyable, decadent, to open up that lid and get into cold water and do it frequently, do it regularly, without thinking too much and without judging it and without feeling negative or telling yourself stories or making excuses, those attributes will carry over into all the other forms of stress and the times in life when you need to suck it up and discipline yourself and stay on course. So I feel like that is the best takeaway from my cold exposure practice, and the hormonal and immune boosting and anti-inflammatory benefits are pretty awesome also. So back to the quote from Dr. Shevchuk, the finishing the dopaminergic pathways involved in the regulation of emotions. There's a lot of research linking these brain areas to depression. So how to battle anxiety and depression naturally is to build a cold exposure practice. More research from Dr. Ned Brophy-Williams on the anti-inflammatory benefits. Quote, it moves blood from the peripheral to deep blood vessels, thereby limiting inflammation and swelling and improving venous return. Metabolites and waste products built up during exercise can be efficiently removed by the body and nutrients quickly replenished to fatigued muscles, end quote. So there's some great research that cold therapy after exercise can help speed recovery. You might have heard some contentions where people are recommending that you don't jump in the cold tub right after a workout intended to produce hypertrophy, to grow bigger muscles, because it can blunt some of that inflammatory response, and that's fine. But that was also an extreme research project where they put people into cold for 8 minutes after a hypertrophy-inducing workout, and they lost some of the benefits. But for most of us, our main concern is to recover. That's why the elite runners have been known to go wade into the icy river after their long runs to get those muscles, that inflammation, cooled down and help prompt or help boost the process of returning to homeostasis, which is the essence of recovering from a stressful workout event. So I will routinely go jump into the cold tub after a sprint workout. Sometimes I'm just using my legs and I'll stay in there for several minutes, or sometimes I'll do a full immersion like I do first thing in the morning. Also, your lymphatic system, the pumping system that helps to remove waste products and keep the body healthy, working independently from the cardiovascular system. The lymphatic system is activated by cold exposure, which helps speed the clearance of toxins from tissues throughout the body. You will also elicit an enhanced antioxidant defense with increased T cell activity to improve immune function. Of course, I went into much more detail about the science on my podcast dedicated to cold exposure, and will also do so on the online multimedia educational course. But hopefully you're a little intrigued by now. So I'm going to end with just some tips to get started nice and gently so that you don't feel intimidated or go in to the extent that you tried it for a little bit and you stop, because this is a wonderful long-term inclusion into healthy, active, energetic lifestyle, disease prevention, longevity, all that great stuff. And you can start simply with a cold shower. And this is during the times of year and your location where you can actually pull some cold water. So if we're talking about being in Phoenix in the summer and taking a cold shower, not too impressed, because that water's probably not even below 60 degrees Fahrenheit coming out of the pipes in the summertime in a hot climate. And so generally, the widely regarded range for cold exposure is down near freezing and as high as 60 degrees Fahrenheit, kind of the cutoff where anything over that is not really therapeutic cold exposure in the traditional refrain that a lot of practitioners are recommending. So if you're thinking about water between 40 and 60, that's plenty cold. I like to have my water as low as possible. So I'm trying to get near freezing and never over around 40 because I spend a short time in there. I'm well adapted, so it's not a big deal. I'm not feeling like my hands are about to burn off, and it's taken some time to get there, but you can pick a comfortable temperature that you're willing to spend a minute or two in when you get to that level. But starting out, cold shower, wintertime, no problem. Almost anywhere you go, you can turn that handle to cold, and you're going to get that prompting of these hormonal processes that occur. And so to make it as easy and doable as possible, here's what I ask you to do. Just turn that handle to cold for 30 seconds in the middle of your wonderful hot shower that you take every day, and just get some cold exposure. And even if you have to finish with warm, that's fair game. So get in the regular shower, enjoy it, and then discipline yourself and tell yourself in your mind, I am now going to engage in therapeutic cold exposure. I'm going to crank that handle to cold. Here we go. And I'm going to breathe through this experience. I'm going to control my breathing rather than default into the screaming, shallow, panic, stress breathing that occurs when, for example, we get pushed into the pool or we do something that's against our will. So this is a willful act to boost your health where you're going to breathe through it with devotion and resilience. Just reach for that handle, turn it to full cold, make sure you can endure for a minimum of 30 seconds. That should be no problem, knowing that pretty soon you're going to be able to reach for that handle and crank it all the way back to hot and get out with that wonderful sense of exhilaration. And that's your starting point. And so if you can build up some competency with cold showers or temporary cold showers, and people talk about doing 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, working your way up to where you can last for 2 minutes in a cold shower and perhaps rewarming with a hot shower after that 2-minute period, whatever works for you, where you get better and better and spend more time with the cold water cascading down your body. And by on that note, I should also mention that I want you to get into that nozzle, get it all over your head, move around so the cold water goes down your back, down your chest, all over your whole body, and get an authentic cold exposure experience. And again, if you want to rewarm right on the spot with hot water, that's okay. There are some benefits in the long run to rewarming naturally, and I talk about that on my videos and in my course, where that's really going to kickstart the fat reduction benefits of cold exposure when you can go in, take a 2-minute cold shower, that's it, no hot water, get out, towel off, and in appropriate climates, I'm not talking about cold wintertime climates where you're going to be exposed anyway, but let's say during the temperate regions, you can take that cold shower, get dressed, and rewarm naturally over the ensuing hours. And sometimes if you're going to the extreme, like some of my sessions where I'm down in 38-degree water for a few minutes, I'll get a little chilled in the hours afterward and have to wear extra clothing. But this is all fine-tuning the body's ability to work back to homeostasis and getting the body temperature and all the systems back at normal. So as you build up competency with your cold showering, you're probably going to want to escalate to a dedicated cold immersion. And that can be in the bathtub at first, where you go to the store and buy some ice. That becomes a big hassle after a while. That's why it's so cool to see the emergence of an industry dedicated to cold therapy tubs designed for that use. If you look at thecoldplunge.com, a wonderful website with extensive education and this fantastic cold tub that's custom designed for a cold therapy experience. So you have circulating and filtered water at all times. You lift up, there's a covered insulated lid, just like you see on a hot spa, and you put this thing in your backyard or even in your garage or indoors. It's all self-contained, wonderful technology. Yes, it's an investment, but in terms of ready access, 24/7 access to therapeutic temperature therapy, it's a fantastic investment, and it's a wonderful centerpiece to your health practices in the home and convenience in that way. So I'm loving my plunge, and it's been a huge upgrade, improvement from the chest freezer that I used for a long time against its intended use. But you will get there to the point where you're going to want to invest in something that really works for you and makes it convenient. So there's a big difference from being a cold therapy enthusiast who has to get in the car and drive down to the convenience store, the supermarket, and buy a bunch of ice and dump it in your cold bathtub. That's going to get old really quickly, and it's also going to divert you from making this a regular, consistent, effortless, enjoyable practice that's time efficient and all those other things. So build some competency first, get your cold shower game up, get your cold baths, go over to a friend's house and try some cold therapy. Or if you happen to live in an appropriate environment like I do in Lake Tahoe, where the lake is cold for many months of the year, it's well under 60 degrees. It gets down to 42 in the winter and also during the spring snowmelt season. So I can get that open water access, which is wonderful. Of course, there's all kinds of safety precautions when we're talking about open water. So you're going to be staying near shore. You're going to have a buddy system, all that kind of thing. But perhaps one day you'll be inspired to invest in a home device. So check out thecoldplunge.com. There are many other providers of quality units. This is a pretty affordable one in that category. Of course, you can get a discount mentioning the B.rad podcast listener. And boy, I can't recommend it enough. But I also want to emphasize this point in closing, that you don't have to go to the point where you feel negative emotions or truly uncomfortable or feel like you're really suffering. So if you're a new enthusiast to this, remember that research that a 20-second immersion is enough to prompt these amazing hormonal benefits, and don't overdo it. Just dabble in it to the extent that you're comfortable and you're not intimidated. And you can go and do a deliberate 20-second immersion into icy water and get out before you have this adverse emotional response to the entire practice in general. So I want to emphasize that point, that it's not fun and games. I mean, it's not, candy cane and lollipops and jumping into the 104-degree jacuzzi, but it's a nice pairing of all the pleasures and indulgences that you enjoy in life, where something that builds focus, resilience, and discipline can become part of your daily life, and the enjoyment, the celebration of rewarming afterwards, or engaging in contrast therapy, better yet, where you're jumping in the cold, then you're going back into a warm, hot shower or hot tub, back in the cold, back in the warm. It's tremendously relaxing. There's nothing like it. And I'm a huge fan of that too, when I have the appropriate environment for that. Listen to more details on my podcast dedicated to cold exposure, and also watch out for this upcoming online educational course. Thanks for listening. I look forward to you getting started. Send me some comments if you have any questions, podcast@bradventures.com.